are stories that connect us to ourselves and each other. These stories reveal who we are and show us the many vivid, wild colors of our truth. Welcome to Soul Wanderings, where we raise spiritual awareness and foster connections through these shared stories and personal experiences. And now, exclusively on KGRA Radio, I give you your host for Soul Wanderings Radio. Here's AJ.
Hi, Wanderers. Welcome. This is Soul Wanderings, and I am AJ Rasmussen, your host. Thank you for being here. Welcome, welcome. We are live on kgradb.com and over on KGRADB Facebook and YouTube pages. If you want to join us on video, you can join in the conversation also and hang out with other listeners on all of these platforms. And just like always, you guys type your questions in caps so I can grab them easily, or Bill, my producer, can help us out. And we'll grab those questions as time allows us to do so. I love when you participate, so don't be shy. If you have a question, all you have to do is ask. I'm going to get right into our introduction tonight so we can wander with our newest guest. Tonight we are hanging out with Debra Lynne Katz, and she's an internationally renowned speaker and founder and director of the International School of Clairvoyance, one of the first online schools in the world to offer interactive small group clairvoyant training in a teleseminar and webinar formats. She's also the author of You Are Psychic, Extraordinary Psychic, and Freeing the Genie Within. And she's been a professional clairvoyant, healer, medium for the past 25 years and is a parapsychologist and research subject. She has performed thousands of clairvoyant readings to help people understand more about themselves, their lives, and their relationships. And she's also an accomplished remote viewer, having assisted with financial forecasting, business consulting, finding lost objects, and occasionally crime solving and even treasure hunting. So cool. Right now, she's currently a PhD student in psychology at the University of West Georgia and holds a master's degree in social work with a BA in psychology. She's a former federal U.S. probation officer, legal advocate for domestic violence victims, and the director of day programs for adults with developmental disabilities. Needless to say, this lady is super busy, and here we have her on our show tonight, spending some time wandering with us. Let's welcome to the show, Debra Lynne Katz.
Hi, AJ.
You are so busy. Check you out doing all of these magical things.
Oh my gosh, that bio is way too long.
You know, I thought about shortening it, but I was like, no, this is amazing. You really are participating on so many levels in this experience. So good for you.
Well, I'm really happy to be here with you. It's a great honor, and I know you've done so much good work yourself, so I'm just looking forward to getting to know you better here.
Likewise, I'm so glad, and thank you for saying so. Soul wandering is definitely something I love. It's a passion of mine, and I really genuinely like getting to know you people like out in the world doing the things that help others. So here we are. Let's wander together. I know you said your bio was super long, but I'm sure there's so much more to you other than titles and achievements. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, what was your childhood like? How did you grow up and learn about who you are and what your passions were?
Yeah, well, I do feel that I have a twin sister. Her name's Amy, and we're identical twins. So I do feel like that played a significant role in both my development as someone who had lots of psychic experiences, and it was really helpful to have somebody who could experience these things along with me. So that was really cool. But my whole childhood and teenage years, I really spent searching to learn more about these topics. I just so much wanted to understand them. And of course, many people around me couldn't explain what was going on, but we would have different experiences, like where we would know what the other one was thinking or feeling. And sometimes we would communicate with each other through our dreams, or we would see the same kinds of apparitions. Like I would see this figure standing in my parents' doorway day after day, pretty much almost every morning when I would wake up. And that happened for about 2 years or so, until I found out that my sister was seeing the same thing, but I had never talked about it. So we would have corresponding experiences that helped us to know that these things were real. But it really wasn't until I was in my later 20s that I just started to discover that this was something that you could develop and that you could take classes in and learn. So to me, that's something that blew me away, because when I was about 19 years old, I went to a psychic, and she told me someday I'd be doing what she did. And I thought, well, she's not a very good psychic, because there's no way I could ever know how to do this stuff. But as it turned out, about 9 years later or so, I came across first the Berkeley Psychic Institute, which you may be familiar with. That was when I first discovered that you could learn how to harness your abilities in a way that you could get information about other people. And then I just continued training after that. And I continue even today, even though I've been teaching classes for a long time now. Any chance I get to learn about how to just focus better, to get more and more details, I'm just constantly still studying that. So yeah, that's
on top of your busy schedule. I love that. I really feel like when you're passionate about something, all of a sudden you have all of this energy, and you have the time and the people and the places all come onto your path to assist you in learning more about what you're being called to learn about. And it sounds like that is exactly what has been happening for you. You were so young when you were starting to question your abilities, though. A lot of kids don't understand that they have an ability. They just realize that no one understands them. And how did that work out for you? How did you know that you had these abilities and to start asking those questions?
Well, it really, I never looked at it as an ability. And in some ways, I mean, I do see it now as a skill, just because I've practiced so much, like I've studied and practiced. But in those days, I was just having experiences. And I really thought that this was just something that everyone had experiences with. And I do believe that everyone does. It's just they don't always get that confirmation to know, and I read in your bio that you realized at some point when you were helping people just with their problems, and then you would feel so exhausted afterwards that you realized that you were an empath. So you were oftentimes like feeling their emotions and their pain and maybe even their tiredness. So this was something I just became aware of at a really young age that I was doing, because I had someone to reflect it back to me and talk to me about it. And it was kind of like we would do these mini experiments even when we were just like 6 years old or so. So I think, again, it really helped that I had my sister right there to bounce these things off of.
Wow.
My mother was at least open enough where she didn't stop us from getting books. She would take us to the library every week. So we would get books on these topics. And, at first they were just kind of fictional books, maybe about just ghosts and witchcraft and things like that. But then my sister, we lived in Illinois and a couple hours away from the Theosophical Society. And my sister somehow got us a subscription to their library. So we would get these like mail order books that we could barely understand. I mean, even if I try to read them right now, like books written by Alice Bailey and Madame Blavatsky. These were, written in the 1800s and really, really hard to understand. But, we would just kind of look through the words that we could pick up, like meditation. And so we started to just experiment with meditating and just doing whatever we could, even when we were just like 11 or 12. So, we just, it's weird because I'm like, how did an 11-year-old get a subscription to this place that my parents weren't into it at all? But yeah, it somehow worked out. So, and my sister in those days, she was more proactive than I was. So I really have to credit her for, even though we're only 4 minutes apart, but she would just, go get these materials and talk to people. And so I doubt if it had just been me alone, if I would have gotten into this stuff.
Well, I feel like it's a lot more fun with a friend anyway. And even for the validation, right? So you don't feel like you're going crazy, because it does feel like that when you start picking up on other people's information and feelings and all of the things. You really feel like something's wrong with you. At least for me and most of the people I talk to that have any type of gifts or ability to see and feel and all of those things. It can be scary. It can be unsettling in a lot of ways. So yay for sister.
Yeah, that was good. And then, I would just notice like it would be useful. Like when I was in college, like one time I was in this doing my laundry and I was sitting at this table in the laundry room and I started getting these images of bugs and I started to feel like there were bugs around me and I have a bug phobia. So I was like, I'm looking around, I don't see any bugs. And I look on the ground and I don't see any. And then I go back to doing my work. And again, like I get these images of ants. And so I like got down under the table, looked down, and sure enough, there were ants down there. So it would be just like little things like that. Or I had a guy in my dorm room or not my room, but my whole dormitory, the boys' floor was on the second floor and we were on the third floor. And he left suddenly school one day. We didn't know what happened. He lived in Canada and I didn't see him for 6 months. And then one night I had a dream. And in the dream, I was walking down the main street. This was in Carbondale, Southern Illinois. And I was walking down like the city street and he pulls up in the car in my dream and he's wearing a bright green suit, like his top is green and his bottom is green. And it was a particular car, turquoise blue. And so I thought, well, that's weird that I had this dream. And then sure enough, like 6 hours later, my friend invited me out to lunch. We leave the restaurant and they're right on the same street, the same car. And the guy gets out of it and he's wearing this bright green top and bottom. So there would be enough experiences like that where I would know, okay, something is going on here and I need to pay attention to it. But like so many other people, I was going to school. I had all kinds of other things I was interested in. And so there'd be periods of time where I'd be really into this stuff. And then other periods where I would just almost kind of forget about it until something like that would happen.
Yeah.
But at some point, once I really dedicated myself to this work, which meant I had been working as a probation officer for the federal government for a few years. And after I was studying every day, I was meditating for hours. I was just doing practice readings for about a year, working with different healers. And I just got to the point one day where I said, I can't do this work anymore for the government. I need to be dedicating myself to my spiritual work. And when I said that, everything started to transform. I ended up just leaving my job, just saying I was retiring, and just gave like 3 weeks notice with hardly any money or knowing what I was going to do. But from that point forward, I just went full force with these topics, and I pretty much live and breathe and sleep. And I mean, I almost never get a break, because even when I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming about it, I'm communicating with my guides. So it is 24/7, no matter what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you make that decision and go all in, like I said, everything lines up for you. But when you're so passionate about what you're doing and you believe in it and yourself so much, you can't help but not do more of it, right?
Yeah, and you know what? The thing is, it was not easy at all. And
Mhm.
like you say, part of this whole journey was really about having faith, because there
Yes.
were so many times where when I first started off on this particular path, and I was about 28 or 29, I was really broke. I didn't know when I said I'm going to dedicate myself to my spiritual work, I didn't know what that meant or what that would look like. And I had to, in some ways, it was really cool because it forced me to really apply the law of attraction, which I believe in wholeheartedly. You know, it was just about manifesting basically on a daily basis what I needed in terms of attracting to me other like minded people, finding myself in communities where people were open to these things. And so it was quite a journey, and it was really challenging at times. And I always want to point out too that I had to learn some really hard lessons, such as
Mhm.
just because you say you're going to devote yourself to your spiritual work or your psychic work, that doesn't mean it's going to immediately support you. And it
Right.
didn't. And I remember I pretty much stumbled across a TV studio when I was living in Sedona, Arizona, that was looking for a TV host. So I became a host of a show for a few years. And at the same time, I was still really struggling. And I had on my show a guest, Krishna Das, who you may be familiar with. He is a chanter. Does ecstatic singing and dance. And so he was this musician, and I was really excited to have him on my show. But at the same time, like, I couldn't even pay my rent that month. And I just said to him, you know what? I didn't tell him I was talking about myself, but I was like, a lot of people here, you know, are really struggling in Sedona. They've come here because they want to do their spiritual work, and then they're having a hard time supporting themselves. Like, what do you suggest? And he said the most important words to me, which were, if you are broke, go get a job. Like, it's not spiritual to be broke. It doesn't matter if you have to, you know, wash dishes or clean
Right.
floors or whatever, you know, whatever it is, just support yourself and continue to do what you love until that until that you're making enough so you can do just that. And that's exactly what I did. I continued to work, you know, for as long as I needed to in other areas, but that just meant when I would get home from work, I would again practice readings, I would write, I would meditate. I was a single mom at the time where my son was just a couple. Well, actually, I started doing this work when I moved to Sedona with him alone when he was only 4 months old.
Wow.
So I had to, you know, manifest childcare and help so that I could go work, but then also do readings. And I would even like keep the schedule where I'd get home from work, I'd go to sleep with him for a couple hours. I'd set my alarm clock and then get up from like 11 till 2 a.m. and write, and then go back to sleep for a couple hours. So it was just like, you know, awake and sleep on and off 24
Mhm.
hours a day. And it ended up paying off. But, you know, I have a lot of people, and I'm sure you talk to people like with your coaching and things, where people are like, you know, I'm just too busy to do what I really want to do or what I would love to do. And it's like, it doesn't mean it's not going to be really hard, but you do need to really do both. You need to
Right.
work, and you need to do, even if it's just tiny little steps towards what you love, or even if you don't know how to get started, you know, read a book about it. You know, even I'm sure
Exactly.
people watching us right now who say like, oh, I'd love to get more on my path of my psychic work. Okay, well, just sitting here and
Right.
spending time with us talking about this is having an effect on people, even if they don't know
Right.
the next step after that.
Right. Right. I agree with you, everything that you said. Sometimes I feel like when people step into a spiritual lifestyle or belief of some kind, they automatically think because they think positive and they're doing all these great things and all these people and experiences are lining up for them that it's always just going to be so easy that everything just falls into place. But with everything, like any belief or any way of living, you still have to do the work. It doesn't just fall in your lap and you have it made. I'm sure some people will claim that to be the case, but things don't just happen like that, in my opinion. You really do have to make some sacrifices and priorities in order to achieve your goal of having what you desire.
Yeah, exactly.
I love when people come into my store and they say, I would love to have a store like this. This would be so much fun, and I would be so happy coming to work every day. And although all of those things are true, it didn't just happen, right? I had to work like 20 hours a day, literally, to make to create something that is where it is now. And the work hasn't stopped. There's still so much to be done, but that's part of the journey and enjoying the rewarding parts of helping others and doing the work for myself is that I do put in this extra time and hours because it pays off and the good outweighs the more challenging experiences.
Yeah, that is so cool that you have a store. Are you in it right now? Is that your
No, this is my art studio that I'm hanging out in.
Yeah, your
So
paintings are so beautiful.
thank you. I love painting. It's been the one of the biggest parts of my journey, and if I can recommend that to anyone, find a hobby. I don't know if you've had the same experience. Sometimes that is meditation or yoga, and it is spiritual looking. Painting to me is spiritual. It's a way that I have healed through some of the hardest times of my life and just not putting it in a box, but just painting with my fingers. And a majority of my paintings are finger paintings. And I just feel like that's the way for me. And I want everyone to find that something that is a way for them to work on their healing too. And so it's just a really big part of my journey. And I love to share that with as many people as possible, just like what you're doing. You share, 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 share. Um, the same thing isn't going to be great for every single person. So what you have is different than me and vice versa. And there are plenty of people in the world that will relate to one or the other, which is really awesome, right? Part of what makes us who we are, our own individual self. So,
Yeah, and what kind of paints do you use?
I use all kinds, mostly acrylic and watercolor, but I'm a mixed media artist. Yeah. Do
Yeah,
you create art yourself?
You
Do you
know,
play?
I when I do remote viewing work, I sketch. And so I've been trying to occasionally I'll take like an online art class just to try to get my sketching better because it's really pretty rough. But I would love to that's one of my goals now that I'm done with graduate school is to just focus more on taking some
Good.
art classes and I
It's
always
so
want
amazing.
yeah, I always want to paint like I'll go and buy different paints like oil paints and acrylic. Like I've got so many paints at home, but then I sit there and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do here. Or with the oil paints, it just seems so technical. I just start to kind
Yeah.
of get overwhelmed with
It's
it.
because 'cause you're in your head, which, I mean, we do as humans, right? We're so good at getting in our own heads and getting in our own way, but the beauty of, like, art journaling is where I really started is there is no right way or wrong way, it's just a way. You just literally feel the colors and the textures and just start putting thoughts or quotes into place, and it's coming through you and not something you're creating in your mind.
Yeah, I love that. So you just feel what you want to paint.
Yes.
You're thinking about it.
Yeah, I never premeditate what I'm going to paint. I literally go through a process of smudging myself, my room, setting space, candles, incense, like really creating an experience. And then I just grab the colors I'm feeling and just start squeezing them onto paper and see what unfolds.
That's so cool.
Everyone should try it. It really is so much fun. So thanks for asking the questions. I don't usually talk about me that much, so
Oh,
I want to get to know you, and we're going to do some more of that when we get back. So we're going to have our first break, everyone. Stay close because when we return, we'll learn more about our guest, Debra, Lynne, Katz.
Hey members, the new KGRADB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRADB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRADB.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Soul Wanderings. You're hanging out with us on KGRADB.com. It's an amazing station. Check out the website. I'll share more with you later. But in the meantime, we are hanging out with Debra, Lynne, Katz. Welcome back to the show, dear.
Oh, thank you.
You're on the flip side. Oh, there we go. That kind of threw me off.
That's funny.
My producer's awesome. Quick fix. As if it was wrong. It was not.
Just played
There's
jokes on us.
Yeah. Musical chairs. Oh, that's good. Okay. So you, Miss, have so much going on. Like we learned a little bit about before the break. I want to dive a little deeper into so you don't call them abilities, gifts. What do you call the things that you are able to do? Your psychic, your clairvoyance, your remote viewing. How
Well,
should I refer to them as?
I wouldn't even say I've got a great alternative. I would say whether they're skills, but at the same
Skills.
time, these are our natural perceptual, what would you call it? Perceptual ability. Like, what do you call your eyesight? What do you call your hearing?
Senses. Yeah.
So our perceptual senses. So then what we can do is develop them so that we can know how to work with them better. So, I wouldn't say skills or abilities is wrong, but I guess what I want to do is normalize them and make it clear that everybody has these.
Yes.
It's just a matter of being aware that a person has them and then knowing how to work with them. And I feel like we have other characteristics within ourselves that then can support those. And kind of like what we were talking about, just life in general, not everything is easy. And so some people find that it's like they recognize they have these skills or that they can make use of their intuitive perceptions, but then they find that it's too stressful or it takes too much concentration or too much time, or there's just stress involved, especially when it involves working with other people and applying them to other people. And so some people just don't want to go there in terms of going full forward ahead with them when they learn that could be an option. But a lot of people, I've been training people now for close to 20, I'd say like 23 years. So some people just, love it, just like myself, go full forward. I have so many students that didn't even know that they could do this work. And then after our training together, they make whole careers of it. And then other people just say, yeah, I would never want the stress of having to read people, but I love to be able to make use of this for my own self and my family and, on a practical basis. So, it does take a certain personality type to want to do this work. And so that's where I would say sometimes having it's not just the intuitive abilities, but are you confident? Are you kind of able to be discerning? Because there's a lot involved with whether or not what to communicate and how to communicate and things like that.
I like that you brought up that everyone has the ability to do all of the things that you do. I don't know about you, but when I first started out on my spiritual journey, what I learned from it in the very beginning is that not everyone has the ability to have any of the clair abilities or be able to remote view or read auras or whatever that looked like, that you were either born with it or you weren't. And it never resonated with me. It never felt right because we are capable of so much. And really, it's like now I see that from my experience in digging deeper and switching circles, that I've met people who didn't know, just like you explained, didn't know that they had anything going on. But after taking a class or two and having some practice, they're like, wow, I had no idea. And it really does change their perception, not just on themselves, but the world around them. They're not for whatever reason, not as closed-minded, or they believe more, or whatever it ends up being for them as their experience. But you brought it up. So there I go on a deep dive. I think it's really cool when people understand. Sorry, my hair is like, keeps getting in my mouth. So I love that people are able to know, like, that interests me. And I want to learn more about it. And it would be really neat if I learned how to do it. And they can. So one of the ways that they can do that is through your place or places like yours. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the business that you're involved with and what it is that you guys are doing to bring awareness to others that they too can do the same things that you can.
Yeah, well, so a variety of formats. So I have a few books that teach people how to access their psychic abilities and then develop them. And then also through the International School of Clairvoyance, I teach a number of classes that right now, they're all online right now. And meaning we meet by Zoom, and we have 12-week classes where people will learn meditations and visualizations, and then they go into getting to practice on each other, and then we bring in volunteers for them to practice on. And so there's an emphasis on clairvoyance because that tends to be the psychic ability that people will spontaneously experience the least just on their own, but it's something that can totally be developed. And there's a lot of value in developing and by clairvoyance, I should back up just a little bit. That's the psychic ability to access information visually. So through colors and pictures and images. So I teach people how to access information on a visual level, but at the same time, they're really accessing it through their clairsentience, feeling, clear knowing or instant knowing, just where information will just come right to a person and they'll suddenly know something that they couldn't possibly know about someone else, or claircognizance, telepathy, mind-to-mind communication. So we work with all of these, but there's something about when you focus on the visual first, and you're so focused on the visual, it opens you up to have information coming through all different parts of your body. And I'll have a lot of people come in who say, well, I'm only clairsentient, like I really only feel. And I'll say, okay, well, that's great. That's a starting point. But now we're going to help you access information in all different ways, because feeling is great and it's important. And there's techniques that you can do, especially if you are good with feeling, like where you reach out and try to touch a person, or you could like draw a person, like people like yourself as an artist. You might do really well, like if you drew or like just painted somebody, even if it was just like a silhouette form or just some colors of them, and then you touch them, and then you could touch that piece of paper and get information through your touch, but you could ask for it to come in visually too. So as you're touching, you're still like asking for maybe colors to come to you first, and then you could probe those colors to get more and more details. So I will say, yeah, it's great that you can feel, but feeling only goes so far, right? So you feel like someone's sad or that they have a pain in their back or something like that, but then you want more details. Why is that pain there? What's causing it? Or why are they sad? Or what's going to help them get over being sad? So that's information that you can't just feel. You need more details. And so that's what I do in my clairvoyant classes. So I offer like 3 different levels of clairvoyant classes, but then I also teach remote viewing. And remote viewing, there's a lot of crossover, but I really define remote viewing more as working in a structured way to access information about physical things. So even though you can get information about people, it's not really about sitting there reading a person as much as it is accessing information about locations and objects and anything in the physical world, and photographs. And the nice thing about remote viewing is it's easier to like judge your progress, because you could remote view a photograph that you're going to see in the future, and then you could compare how well you did to looking at the picture. And you can score all your perceptions, and you can sketch and score, okay, was this matching or not? It's harder to do that when you're reading people. And really, when you're reading a person, it's not just like, oh, was I right or wrong? It's, how can I help this person, and how can I bring healing to them? And if you are too focused on, how am I doing? Am I right or wrong here? Whenever you have the thought like, oh, how am I doing? Well, your attention's on yourself. It's not on the other person. You're separating yourself, you're going into your ego, and then you're actually losing the connection and getting away from the person and not
That makes
really doing
sense.
what you want to do with them. So these are all things that we cover in the classes, and it's great because I used to do a lot of one-on-one mentoring, but I found that then I needed to bring in other people for them to practice on. And I found that like when my student and whoever they were practicing on got together, like it was powerful that they were getting to just share this with others. So now I'm at the point where I found so much value with people getting to meet each other in classes, and they'll practice and then they'll practice outside of class together. And I've got people all over the world that have become friends, and they even go and visit each other.
Oh, I like that.
And it's all most of that is through meeting through Zoom or other platforms like that, because we'll get together for about 3 or 3.5 hours once a week, and then sometimes a additional day during the week for practice. So people really get to know each other after the 12 weeks or so. So yeah, it's I really love it. And then I'm also teaching a mediumship class right now as well. So that's been,
What does that look like, a mediumship class?
yeah. So, well, basically, then we're focusing on spirit communication. So, whether it's reading energies around a person, spirit guides, or their deceased loved ones. Sometimes there's different communicators on the other side wanting to get communication through. So, in that class, the students are using what they've learned in the other classes. So, the prerequisite is that they've already taken my clairvoyant class. So then they're learning specifically how to have that communication with spirits and recognize the difference between, okay, right now I'm like psychically just tuning into a person, and right now I'm actually receiving some kind of spirit communication. And so there's a difference there. And so how to recognize that difference. And then also, it's nice that they can already do readings on each other. So, for example, like we brought in volunteers a couple of days ago in Sunday's class. We had 3 volunteers, so they got to practice on people outside of class. And then for the last hour of class, they then read each other to understand like where they did well or where they got stuck. Like one student said that he just felt exhausted, like halfway through the reading with the volunteer, even though it went well. So I was able to have a couple students look at him to see like, why was he feeling so tired during that process? And so it's nice that the students can read each other and understand, use their psychic abilities to try to improve in other areas of
Absolutely.
mediumship.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like there's so much going on, but such a great support system, especially if this is something that you've wanted to do. I'm even intrigued. I'm around people like this all day long, but I'm just like, I'm used to it. That's what I'm around and I love it, but it would be really neat for me to even dive in deeper myself. It's enticing. I'm excited to learn more about it.
There is just so much to learn. But like I said, I mean, it's so cool that you've got your store, and it sounds like you guys do lots of different classes and events there. And yeah, I always find like no matter, I sometimes take classes now like at the Arthur Findlay Institute in the UK since COVID, that they are the oldest and most popular training institute for mediumships in England. And they always were in person until this year. And now they are offering online classes too. So when I heard that they were, because I've always wanted to go to England and study with them, I just signed up for like 10 different workshops, not realizing, I knew that the time zone wasn't good because they're hours ahead. So I've been waking up like once every few weeks or so, or not even going to sleep, but like I'll start class at 1 a.m. and,
Wow.
sit there for 4 hours and then go to sleep and then teach my own classes for a few hours. And it is pretty rough. So I've had to miss a couple of the classes, even though they were already as registered and paid for. But I learned something every time I take a class with anyone, even if it's a teacher that's newer and just, kind of starting out. It's like just learning one approach, or maybe just, I might sometimes trouble areas pop up, where you just feel like, oh, I'm not so good at this topic, or I get a little stuck when I'm like presented with this situation, and then talking to other people and then just learning how to get over those obstacles.
Yeah. It really is a roller coaster too with my experience. Sometimes I feel like I really get it, and then I have an experience and realize, I still have a lot to learn. Or even just a deeper knowing into myself and what I get to work on, so I could be a better version of me to have this knowledge and share this information with others.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And yeah, do you find in your store with the different classes and events going on, like, will you participate in them too? Do you have a chance to do that, like attend them, or are you pretty much like working the cash register or greeting
Yeah.
people?
Mostly I'm working, and if I'm not working, I'll do my best to attend. If anything, the learning is the bonus. It's showing up to support my tribe. That's what I would like to do more of. I do it when I can, but they have so much to share, just like you do. We all have so much to share with each other, and that's what I really love about these conversations. Is if we were having these conversations with each other everywhere we went, we would gain so much from those moments with that we've been having with other people. And yet, the world right now is like division, division, division. Don't talk to your neighbor, don't be friends with these people, don't interact with this group, when we could be learning and exploring so much together.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Even from those that we have really different viewpoints, if we could
Mhm.
just have conversations with them, we would learn a lot. I just had a great conversation with a guy who has a very different political viewpoint from me, and we had different ideas about the vaccine, because I was pro-vaccine, even though I do have some strong concerns about it, but I still got it. And he was very much against it. And we had like a phone conversation, and he really opened my eyes to some things, because he's got two little girls, and just the impact of, like he put it, that he feels like people are so fearful, of getting sick, which, I've kind of been in that category of just, yeah, let's do what we can to protect ourselves. But then he was pointing out, what are the psychological effects of having just this fear-based mindset for your kids? And is that fear-based mindset, is that even worse than, the potential of people getting sick? So it was just a really good conversation. And I thought, gosh, I wish, we could just like talk amicably like that
Yeah.
with other people, and then we would start to meet in the middle. Because I always look at it like, if there's a controversy with two sides, there's got to be something valuable. The controversy wouldn't even stand up if there wasn't value and truth about both sides, so
Right.
can we just come together and meet? That would be great.
It really would. And you being clairvoyant and being able to see things, do you feel like everything that's happening will bring us to a place of clarification and togetherness with one another, because these conversations seem to be happening more and more? I'm just curious on what your take is on that.
Well, I would like to believe that, but I will do things like tune in to the future. Like because it's not like I'm sitting there and I have this like all knowing sense of everything,
Right.
right? Like, so it really doesn't work that way. I mean, we might get intuitions about things, but if I want to know like what's going to happen with COVID or what's going to happen, like I live in Oregon now, what at the start of COVID, I was always kind of tuning in and using my dreams and anything I could to get information about how things were going to go in the future. And I did get, even from the start, that like at some point it would pretty much just be a non-issue. So I saw that, we were going to get past all of this as a society, not that there weren't going to be people, really suffering and dying. So it was useful tuning in. But, in terms of, are we all going to just suddenly get along and everything's going to be great? That's not what I'm seeing. I mean, that's what I want. I'm an eternal optimist. I think eventually we'll get there, but I think it's going to take decades to get there, and it's not going to be. And it'll be groups of people getting there. But on our planet, we've got so many different cultures, and so when we say, are we going to get all get along? Maybe at parts of in the United States, people will be getting along better in the future, but then there'll still be some groups that aren't, and there'll be some places in the world that still won't be doing well. And I wish that wasn't the case, but it just seems like it is.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you feel like we aren't meant to all get along because that would kind of take away from our human experience? Because it contrasts in all things, right?
Well, I think I'm more pessimistic right now. People are at different levels of, so many people just want what they want, and they are wanting to, I think we have such differences where there are some people that, and probably like a lot of the people watching this show, they want the best for other people as much as they want for themselves. So if they see someone suffering, they suffer. And in some cases, they would rather suffer than see other people suffer. So there's people that care as much about others as they do about themselves and their family, and even about, animals and even plants. Like, just to see a plant harmed, can cause pain. In fact, I'm
that person.
Yeah. The case for me, my husband and I were planting earlier, and he gave me an axe because there's a tree that fell, we live on a river, and a giant tree fell and is sticking out in the river. And so he's had to start to cut it. And I was helping him, and he's like, here's an axe, like, cut some of these roots. And I went to cut a root, and red came out of it. It looked like the root was bleeding. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know roots bleed, because the tree wasn't red, but red was oozing out of it. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm killing this plant, this tree, even though it already fell. But I know so many people who are like that. It gets like, even eating becomes a problem, because it's like, okay, you don't want to eat meat, but then I feel bad about eating broccoli. What am I doing to the broccoli? So there's a lot of people like that. But then there's so many people that it's not about others. It's about them and their families, or them and maybe the people that look like them or just like them. But and then of course there's people, it's not that when people just care about themselves, it's not that or their families, it's not that they're bad, it's that they're living in a culture where they're so much grew up in survival, when we're just so privileged in the United States. We can't even understand what it's like to grow up in an environment where you're just trying to survive, and if that was the case, like, would I be caring about how plants feel or whatever? I might, go to that primal level as well. So we're just in so many different different circumstances in states that, when I take a look at, okay, how are things going to be in the future, I do feel like there will be improvement in some areas, but in some areas, I don't see it really improving. I've been a part of a project called the 2060 Project with a researcher named Stefan Schwartz, who's pretty well known in the remote viewing community. And we've been doing a project where we had 100 remote viewers tune into the year 2060 to see what life would be like. And he had already, maybe a decade or so ago, had people look at the year 2050. But then just recently, he wanted to see what would people see, or remote viewers be able to see about the year 2060. And it did seem like in some areas, like there wasn't racism so much anymore. What I'm describing right now is if I took like the themes that emerged from a number of the 100 viewers. So not everyone got this, but it seemed to come out a lot in the sessions that people weren't white so much anymore. They were a mixture, like more light brown skin or lighter skin, because the races had come more together. And so, and people didn't like, race wasn't an issue. So some of the things that are so much an issue right now just weren't such a big deal anymore. And so I thought that was interesting and promising as well. It seemed like also like equality with maybe even like men and women were a little bit more androgynous. So these dichotomies weren't as big. And now I know in what I'm saying, like some people are going to be like, oh, that's so cool. And other people are going to be like, wow, that's terrible. That you don't have men and women, and it wasn't that you don't have men and women still. It was just that these issues of equality were just less, there was a lot less polarization. So that was cool. It seemed like healthcare, this was something that seemed to come up quite a lot too, that people had access to healthcare, and there was so much a focus on living in a healthy way that people, like, it was not okay to eat junk food, or like, I don't even know if they still have junk food then, but it wasn't okay to like treat yourself in your body in a way that you would be unhealthy. So it was almost like socially, socially looked down upon. So because of that, there was so preventative health and medicine was a really big thing.
Awesome.
And it looked like people were, a lot healthier for the most part, but they did see like people living in enclaves too. Like this was so weird, because out of like just dozens of the viewers had the same thing, and they were like surprised, even myself, because I did a session too on it. And like, I found myself like living in a really small place, like everything is compact, but it's like not this, excess, like everyone's living in these huge homes and everyone, it was like very consolidated, very efficient spaces, but people living in very efficient but smaller spaces in communities, like more communal living. But then there were still people like living in cities, and the people in the cities didn't seem so good. Like it seemed like there was still some like poverty and people like having some violence in the cities, and then a lot of the other people had moved out of the cities. So that's why I say, and then that, not everyone will like necessarily be living like in, bliss or euphoria, or everyone is in the same way. I don't know, like in the year 2060, what it is that like leaves people kind of, some have moved into like these safe communities where everyone's like living really, really peacefully. And then there's still some kind of trouble spots like in the US. And then outside of the US, there were some countries doing well and some countries not doing well. So
interesting that you can remote view 40 years into the future. That just is a crazy thought to me. I want to talk more about remote viewing, but we're going to take a break real quick, and when we get back, let's do that. Let's dive right into remote viewing and what that all looks like. Stay close, everyone. We'll be right back.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Hello, Wanderers. Welcome back. You're listening to Soul Wanderings on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, Salt Lake City, Utah, and Hudson Valley, New York. Have you guys checked out the KGRADB.com website yet? What about the KGRA DB app? I cannot believe how cool these sites are. So much to see. And I encourage you all to have a visit and see for yourself just how amazing this site is. Not only are there archives that you can listen to like all of the shows, there's also exclusive content you won't see anywhere else. And not to mention the classics, where you'll find a lot of the older, very new KGRA shows. So get on it. Check out kgradb.com because it's really cool. Tonight we are hanging out with our guest, Debra Lynne Katz. She's a speaker and author, clairvoyant, remote viewer, healer, and teaches others how to strengthen those muscles. Welcome back to the show, Debra.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad to have you here for another hour. It seems like you have so much to share with us. And one of those things that you brought up before the break was remote viewing. We have a handful of people who've been in chat bringing up remote viewing. I've had tons of people, I say tons, like a couple handfuls of people in my life asking, do I know a remote viewer? And how do you do it? And isn't it so cool? So it's a conversation that's happening more and more, especially with the news that comes out into the media, even more so recently, about visitors coming here to see us, or what's really going on behind the scenes with the government and things like that. So, first of all, tell us a little bit more about remote viewing. What is it exactly, and how would you and why would you want to use that ability?
Sure. Well, people will use the term remote viewing in a couple different ways. So some people just will use it as a synonym for clairvoyance, for being able to use your psychic abilities to see things at a distance. So you'll hear a lot of people say, well, I remote viewed where my keys are, or I remote viewed what happened during the crime. And it's always good to find out what usage they're using it as, because it can be just used in a simple way like that. But a lot of people that call remote viewers use it within the historical context from which it came. And so when I speak about remote viewing, that's also what I'm talking about, is where remote viewing came out of the military and government programs that got started around the early 1970s, and that were cooperation between research labs such as the Stanford Research Institute, and then different agencies within the government, such as the Navy and the DIA, the CIA, and all the programs spanned for a couple decades, and there were over 40 different government agencies in the United States that utilized remote viewers. And so that is the particular historical context from which it comes. And because of that, that means that remote viewing is typically done in a certain way. And it's a very different way than how people would use their psychic abilities, like, again, say to do like intuitive readings or clairvoyant readings or mediumship readings. So as we talked about, I do both, but I see the two as quite different. They're different approaches. And if you're talking about the way that remote viewing was performed in the government programs, a lot of times it was done in more of a controlled manner. So you'll hear the term controlled remote viewing. Now, this even controlled remote viewing can have a few different meanings, but basically it was a process by which viewers would use their abilities in a structured way. They would have separation of roles, which allowed them to know as little as possible up front about the subject that they were viewing. So a lot of remote viewers today, and back then, but today, they don't want to know what the subject is that they're viewing before they view it. They'll just be given a target number or coordinates and said, here, get information. And they may sometimes in remote viewing, like, we might not even know, is it a murder case? Is it that people are looking for something? Is it about somebody's just they've lost something, or there's a description needed about a photograph? Like, sometimes you won't even know what the purpose is for getting the information. You'll just be assigned a target number and told, okay, like, whatever information you get, put down, and then hand it to your project manager. And then the project manager or researcher, because sometimes it's for a research project, but they'll take your information and then analyze it, and then they will apply it to what they know about the situation. Now, and that would be called, like, how much do you know up front? How much front loading do you have? Or are you working under blind conditions? So personally, I like to know certain things. Like, I want to know, am I looking for an object? I don't have to know that, but if I know that I'm looking for something, I might have a different approach than if I'm just like there to describe a photograph. So, but then if I'm looking for something, I would want to know as little as possible about that thing. I might still want to know, like, okay, it's a missing ring or a missing car, but some viewers don't even want to know that. But then I wouldn't want to know, like, okay, where was it lost, or who did it belong to, or, where does the client think it is? Clients always, people who hire remote viewers, they have this thing where you tell them, like, tell me as little as possible, and they still tell you everything. Like, they're like, don't tell me what this is or where you think it is. And then they'll still be like, oh, well, I think I left it in my kitchen, but I usually keep it in my bathroom. But then the maid was here 2 weeks ago and maybe she took it. Like, that is just all what would be called noise, things that just mess with your mind. And then you have to fight against all of that in order to be able to go after the information. So typically, remote viewers will like to work with as little information up front. And then you could have more confidence too that the information you're getting is coming from your psychic abilities as opposed to from your logical mind. And then because of that, it does work well to work as a team. So it can really help to have like a project manager who interfaces with the client and then kind of they control how much the information the viewer is getting. And then it's also kind of, it can be useful too, because with certain things, like say it's a missing person case, of course, the family is so emotional, which, how would they not be? But that can be really tough to then work within as a viewer to just get the information and not be impacted by the emotions, to be able to be more neutral. So it helps to work as a team approach. Not that you can always work that way, but when possible, it works out well.
Yeah. So with your remote viewing, obviously you're looking somewhere else, but are you able to do psychometry? Like if someone gave you an object, would you be able to read the energy about that object?
Well,
Are you?
Yeah. So with psychometry, you could just touch it and, I would say that would be like, what do we call that, remote viewing? Like I'd call that psychometry. I'd call
Well,
that.
I don't mean like, is it the same thing? It just, you're also viewing an object and reading the energy just like you would if you were going, like thinking of a place or a person with the object.
Yeah, you're still using the same abilities. It would just be, the difference would be, instead of having an object there, in fact, one technique with remote viewing is with remote viewing, a lot of times we're doing a written approach. And so we're using pen and paper and sketching. And in a way, what you sketch onto the paper, it then becomes like psychometry, because as soon as you sketch something, you can touch it. So even if you have like a target number, which is just a random number that's assigned to whatever it is you're viewing, you can touch the target number. Or say you're assigned a location and there's a building at the location, and the building might be have many shapes to it, but let's say you just get an initial square. So you sketch the square onto your paper, and then you could touch different points of it. Like if you touch the top of it, then you could get a stream of information about what's at the top of the building. And if you touch the bottom, you'll get a stream of information at what's at ground level. Now you can also say that in your imagination, you're going to move yourself inside the building, or you can get streams of information when you just simply touch, or you could use the approach I'm going to imagine I'm going up above the building and looking down, and what do I see when I look down? And then you might notice, oh, there's a waterfall next to it, or, oh, there's a garden on the left side of it. So I would say psychometry is involved, but it's not that you need to like touch an object. You could just touch what you just sketched. Even a person, like you can draw a person and then touch them on the head and say, I want to like know what they're thinking. And then you might get a stream of information from touching them on the head. Now, I think like psychometry where you're holding an object, I think that is pretty cool. But the problem I found with it is sometimes we're not getting just the information we want. So like say your grandmother gave you a watch and then you handed a psychic the watch and said, here, tell me about myself. Well, is the psychic going to get information about the grandmother who gave it to you, or are they going to get information about you? And so we want to be careful that, because everything contains information. So sometimes maybe it's cool that the psychic gets information about both you and your grandmother. That's great. But there may be sometimes like holding onto the object might not be the best thing for what we're trying to get the information about.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. You had brought that up earlier, so I'm glad that you clarified it. The remote viewing, tell me what that feels like, what that looks like when you're actually sitting down to do a remote viewing session. Is it as if you're in the place and looking around? Like,
well,
does it feel like that? Or what is it like on your end when you're able to get the information?
Well, a lot of it will start off where you just feel like you're imagining. It's not like you immediately have this intense experience where you're totally transported there. So at first it just seems like you're just doing these fun little exercises in your imagination. But then something will start to happen. And there's a term in remote viewing called aesthetic impact. And that's at the moment where you will suddenly like feel like, oh, something's like larger than me, or, oh, I just got a flash of light in my eyes. Like it just for a second felt too bright, like I needed sunglasses. And in those, so they're just like brief moments, or you might suddenly like just feel like this feeling of fear or something, or like a feeling of dizziness if the target happens to be like a ski slope, because sometimes you'll be given these fun targets like a ski resort and a skier jumping off a mountain. So you imagine yourself at the location and then suddenly you get like this feeling of cold, or you might see like light reflecting off what appears to be ice or snow. And it'll be these brief moments where it is like you're transported there, and you're having an experience where it's you usually will like say, oh, I just felt this happen to me. And those experiences are really cool. And they're not always like, I had one where I was given a target. I didn't know what it was, just I knew it was a location. And I suddenly had this, it was like I was transported momentarily, where I had the sensation of myself being in a suit of armor, lying on the ground with a sword sticking out of my heart. And
wow,
it didn't hurt. There was no pain or feeling, but it was like I saw that, and I could see like the sword sticking out of my chest, and I could like, I somehow knew I was wearing armor, and it was so weird. So there'll be very unusual things like that. And when I had that, I thought, oh, well, I'm like in medieval times, and I think there's probably a castle around, because, that's what's usually around when you're when there's a knight with armor and a sword. And then sure enough, the target turned out to be a castle at medieval times. So it's things like that I would say are what make remote viewing really fun. And I don't want to like give the impression that happens every single moment. It doesn't. A lot of times you're just getting kind of a word or an impression, but it's not like that intense. Other times, like one time I felt like myself moving over this desert, and I saw like these grains of sand like sparkling in the sunlight, and I saw a hole, and the grains fell into the hole, and then a spider crawled out of a hole. It was a scorpion, and then the grains fell in, and it was like such minute detail. It was so cool. It turned out the target was in Saudi Arabia, so it was in the Middle East. But I really missed. I was supposed to get like some buildings there, and I totally missed the buildings. I got totally wrapped up in that. But it was the experience of seeing these tiny grains of sand and like feeling the sand and seeing the light reflect in them. That was so cool. So it's things like that that I love.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to experience. You know,
Right. It sounds like it would be obviously very different each and every time. So,
yeah.
in your bio, you did share with us that um, you've assisted with finding lost objects and crime solving and even treasure hunting. Um, I'm a crime junkie. I'm curious to know what those experiences were for you. Like, how do you help solve crimes with your skills?
Yeah. Well, so I've worked on different group projects, and um, and then individually as well. And so there was one in particular. It was a high profile case with a missing woman in Virginia. And it was a really big case. Now, when we were about 6 or 7 viewers were tasked with helping out, and it was a former
Wow.
police officer who was working with some FBI agents on the case. But the thing was, there were multiple law enforcement agencies involved, and we weren't really allowed as viewers to know like what we knew. The FBI was involved, but we didn't know how much these agents were communicating with the law enforcement on the ground. But anyway, starting off, we didn't even know it was a crime case. So again, I just had a project manager I know. He had written to me and he said, "Would you like to do a remote viewing session? We have an interesting project." And he didn't tell me anything else. So for all I knew, it could have been a research project, or it could have been about
Right.
photographs. And so then, but when I got into the session, I kept getting a sense of a girl who, and this like ominous, scary guy that was around her. And it was like he was, watching her. And then I didn't see exactly what he did to her because I kind of stopped myself when he got too close, but I knew that something really bad had happened to her and that she had been kidnapped. So I wrote that up and sent it to the project manager. And then he knew, okay, you're already getting information about what we know. It was someone who had been missing. And so then he gave me further taskings to to identify the location. And so in the end, we did, I can share this. It's rather gruesome, but I had an experience with that case where when I was looking for her location, I saw it being like in a rural area, and where her body was, there were these birds, and pretty much because I wanted to see both where was she and what was her state, like was she alive? And I saw all these birds around, and they were like eating something on the ground, and I just saw body parts like spread around. So that told me, unfortunately, no, she wasn't alive. And I didn't really pay that much attention to the detail of the birds, even though I wrote it all down and submitted it. But I just thought, okay, this is just telling me she's not
Right.
alive. But as it turned out, the way that law enforcement found her was because all these birds had kept going into the yard where her body was. And the neighbor noticed something was odd about all these birds coming to the next door neighbor's house and told authorities. And that was how they actually found the body.
Wow.
But in that case, I don't believe that it was what the viewers said led them to find it. I think that our information correlated with it, but I don't think, I think that they independently, found her body without the use of the information. But I'm not really sure because, again, there were several layers of people involved.
Right.
So that would be one case. I've helped a lot with missing pets. People find their pets. Sometimes they didn't find the pets, and I saw that they weren't going to find the pets. So, you only get confirmation when people are found and not when they're obviously not found. So there does, in remote viewing, there's something called the search problem, which is that, you can have so much information, but a lot of times it's just not possible to go out and do searches, or it's one thing if something is found, if something's located like right where you can go look for it, but other times there's just no way anyone's going to be able to go, to the actual location. And in remote viewing, a lot of times we will kind of get more visual, or we'll get information about like what a place looks like, and we'll get like lots of details of landmarks, which can be really helpful. But we can get names. Occasionally we will, but a lot of times it's more visual information. So, that's an area that I'm going into as far as research, is looking at how can both myself and other viewers get better at like letters and numbers and street names and addresses. Because really, I think if as a field we're going to progress, we really need to be able to get that information. And occasionally we'll get information, but it's not like, remote viewers across the board are getting, exact addresses. And I think that that's really what's needed if we're going to take this to the next level with crime solving.
Right. How do you look 40 years into the future, but don't have the strength as of yet to come up with letters and numbers?
Well,
40 years in the future is a lot.
Well, it's not really, because there's really, if you think of it like there's no time or space. So if looking tomorrow isn't, if there is information there, and that's not to say that everything is set, but you could look at a photo that you're going to see tomorrow, or a photo you're going to see in 3 years from now. And that you wouldn't do anything different with your approach. With letters and numbers, and again, it's not that you can't get them. Sometimes it's needing to focus on trying to get them, and a lot of people don't. And even like at some point I realized like, oh, I'm not trying to get these letters. And so I'm starting to work on that. And then I have a book coming out in 2 months that's on this topic. It's for pre-release right now, but it's a book on how to use your psychic abilities to make to predict future outcomes of sporting events, financial based projects like the stock market, predicting elections, and the lotto. And so
what's the name of that book, really quick, Debra?
Yes, it's called Associative Remote Viewing: The Art and Science of Predicting Sports, Financials, Elections, and the Lotto. A very long title. It's available. If you look up Associative Remote Viewing and then my name, it's actually for sale for pre-release right now on Amazon. And then it'll be out it's supposed to be out July 1st. We have a lot of work to do in the next couple of weeks. And I have a co-author named John Knowles, and he has very much been working on his predicting the lottery, and he's had many successes with 3-digit numbers. So he's doing really well with that. And there are several people that we have. We did a survey of many different remote viewing communities, and so we document many different people who are having success in these different areas. And they have one woman, she won over $100,000 playing the lotto. Oh, there you go. That's our cover. And then there's another group of people that won over $300,000 with lotto numbers. So it's something that can be done, but it just is an area that is less studied, and a lot of psychics have been just like told like letters and numbers aren't so easy, and they don't even try. So one thing we're doing again is trying to look at, okay, like what areas do people need improvement on? And, if everyone who's psychic says, okay, over the next 10 years, I'm going to, devote practice and time and really try to get better at this, then I think we're going to see just an explosion of people who have a lot more success. Right now, it will be kind of sporadic. Like when you're reading someone, you might get a name, you might get like a name of a loved one, or you might get a name of the street that they're living on, or a name of where they work, but it's kind of sporadic. So how can we, get more consistent with it? We need to, my belief is that we need to take more time and try these, try to do exercises like that. And it takes like concentration and discipline. Now, sometimes like I've had it before where I had a researcher. I didn't know he was going to do this. I thought he was going to give me a picture, and instead he wrote out numbers, and he wrote out like 5 5s. And I thought it was just going to be a picture, but as I'm doing my session, I just started like writing S's. Like all over my paper, I started writing like multiple S's, and I was like, I don't know why I'm like inclined to do this. And then when I was done and looked and found out like what he had tasked me, he had these 5 5s, but when I looked at them, he had handwritten them, and they looked exactly what I was calling S's on my paper. They were the same shapes as the 5. So that was one of the first times where I thought like, wow, this is really, interesting. And yeah, it was like a different interpretation. But if you held up my paper to what he wrote, it was, identical. So then it gets into like, what is an S and what is a 5? We're talking about the shapes, the shapes of what's being drawn. So there's both like what your eyes see on the paper, and then there's what your brain interprets or comprehends, like, and that's called like analytic overlay. What is your brain putting onto the thing? And are you like identifying it, or are you just sketching or describing the basic building blocks? So you can see where remote viewing is very complex. There's a lot to it. In some ways, anyone can do it. And oftentimes you see people having success. Like if you give them a photograph or you give them an object, they have success right away. But then a lot of times they will misinterpret things. And so part of the training, like I have a class that starts actually tomorrow night. If anyone's interested, we still have space in it. It's a 12-week class through Zoom, and we just do all different kinds of targets. So we start off with like objects, simple objects. We go to locations. We'll do people. We'll do precognitive dreaming, and so lots of different kinds of targets. And
can they find out about that class on your website? Okay.
Yeah.
Bill's been popping the website up here and there, so pay attention. Oh, and there he goes. He's on it. Carry on, Debra. I just want to make sure they have the way.
No, I appreciate that. We have a lot of fun in the classes, and it's really cool to see the students' progression, because initially, like, they'll be like, let's say if there's 10 people in the class, then there might be like 3 people who start off doing quite well, and then maybe a couple people really struggle at the start, and then maybe like 4 or 5 people will like get strong aspects, but they have a lot of misinterpretations. And then as we go through the weeks, they're learning how to do less misinterpreting and then getting more and more details. So you learn how to work out some of the problems that you start off with. And then it's really fun to see someone who maybe like the first few weeks, they're just like, oh, I'm not getting anything here. And then suddenly they just start to get like really spot on information. It's so cool to see that progression. So
I love that. Yes.
that's
I
great.
love seeing that in the students that come into my space too. Like they come in one way and after a few weeks of classes, they're completely different. It's just so neat to see the progression.
Yeah, it's really
That's
cool.
the reward. When I was telling you earlier, that's part of
Yeah.
the reward for working so hard. You get to have those moments.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes it all worth it.
I love that it's 12 weeks. That really gives an opportunity for others to dive in deep and really hone in on those skills instead of just here's some information, go practice, have fun, where, a lot of one and done classes are that way. So, great idea having it so extensive.
Yeah, the ongoing practice is what makes a difference, and practice opportunities for students they're just gold. They're so and practice opportunities where then they're going to be accountable, or they know that someone's going to look at their work, and as a group everyone's going to talk about it, what went well, what didn't go so well. That's really important. And over the years, I've taught a lot of weekend workshops. I learned when I've studied with so many different remote viewing instructors, and I love my trainings, but they were almost always like over a weekend, and it's great to have immersion just 1 hour after another, but you kind of get to a point where you just, you're oversaturated, and then not having that ongoing practice is a big thing. So that's why I really love that I can give them homework assignments
Yeah.
on, so there's so much work being done in between classes as well.
That's so good. What other types of classes do you teach?
Yeah, so there's the remote viewing classes, and then there's the clairvoyant reading and healing people, which classes would called clairvoyant level 1 and 2 and 3. So those are where we really focus on how to both heal oneself, read and heal oneself, and then read and heal other people. So those are more people orientated than the remote viewing, and then the mediumship class. So those are the main 12-week classes. And I'm always thinking of other classes within those classes where, we do energy healing. We do a lot of manifesting work and using the law of attraction, the idea of that our thoughts can create reality. So
Yes.
every class, that
So good.
concept is integrated into everything, into the clairvoyant work and the healing work. In a way, reading energy, healing it, transforming it, it's all different sides of the same coin, so to speak. So it's nice that those can be, integrated together. And I'm always coming up with other classes I'd love to teach, but at this point, it's like sometimes 5 days a week I'm teaching, and then I might have, 2 days a week to meet with clients, if even that, and then writing. So yeah, it's right now just time is a factor, and it's so beautiful outside too. So I have a personal goal that I want to spend a lot more time, outdoors, getting in shape, just kind of doing artwork like yourself.
Good.
I really admire that you have a studio and you do so much there. So you're really an inspiration for me. And, it's easy to get out of balance with all this work. And especially that's a problem that psychics, mediums, healers, and remote viewers have a lot of us where, where we sit, we're sedentary. When you're meditating, a lot of times your metabolism is slowing down. And I'm at my age, I'm now really looking at that. I need to reverse that. And, I would love to say like, oh, there's only positive aspects of this work, but the toll that it does take on your body just sitting there is, plus if you write, that takes a toll. So I'm at a place where I just need to kind of do less and less of the psychic work, I think, and more just coming back to the body. On the one hand, it's almost like, who needs a body? You can, there's so many cool things you can do without one, just with your eyes closed and all the explorations you can do on an internal inner level. But we do need the body, and we're only here for a short time. And so I that's an area that I'm trying to work on right now, and
Good for you.
Others to do the same thing.
I've noticed in the past year that seems to be a theme. A lot of us are remembering our vessel and how to take care of it, and really focus in on reversing some of the damage that we've done. I know I'm one of those people. I'm hyper focused on my health right now and have been for about a year. And it has changed a lot of things in my life, and I'm just so glad that you're going to be doing it too, because you'll see it shifts everything. Priorities, perspectives. It's really good. But you just not only teach the classes. I want everyone to be aware that you do so much more. Um, I can't even believe we're almost running out of time. We still have like 25 more minutes, but still, it's going by so fast. All right, so all of these skills, but you also decided to go to school and get your PhD. So what, in psychology of all things, which I think is just awesome, what made you decide to shift gears, or do you feel like they are complementary to each other and that's why you decided to take that route?
Yeah, well, they're very complementary to each other. And when I was in an undergraduate, I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. And then after I got my BA, I applied for about 5 different schools to go on to graduate school for psychology, and I got rejected from all of them. And so then my mother knew some social workers, so she said, "Hey, social work's a great field. Why don't you go into that? You'll make a lot of money." I don't know what she was thinking.
No.
A social worker. Yeah, that's a joke, like $10 an hour. But so yeah, I ended up getting a master's degree in social work, and it did help me become a federal probation officer, and that was good for a little while. I didn't like to supervise people, but I liked doing investigations. And but again, I got out of that when I was about 31 or so. And so psychology is something that I've always been interested in. I think in reading people, you may not call it therapy, but a reading is therapeutic. You're talking about people's innermost issues, all aspects of themselves, emotionally, mentally, relationships. There's so many parallels between doing intuitive readings for people and doing therapy. And so I think that anybody that wants to work with people on any level, like whether intuitive or coaching, or, the more knowledge you can get about psychology and therapy, the better. So I always wanted to get more training in psychology, but again, I got rejected from these programs, and I'm sharing that because I know people are always getting rejected from things and then just think like, oh, well, that means I'm just going to give that up. Like, that's what I thought. But then what happened was, in the last 10 years, once I got into remote viewing, I also got into research. And so very heavily. So I was doing all kinds of research projects. I was learning about research the hard way just by doing it, stumbling, I would talk to other researchers, get help. I was I'm part of the International Remote Viewing Association, and I won a couple of their proposal research awards, which sounded nice, but then it kind of became like a ball and chain to finish these projects, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I thought at one point it would really be helpful to go back to school to learn how to be a better researcher and to just learn, fill in the holes that I was missing as a writer and as a formal writer, or scholarly writer, I guess you would say. So I was thinking about it, and then I went to a Parapsychology Association conference, and there was a speaker from University of West Georgia, and she said for their psychology program, if you get accepted, then they will cover your whole tuition and they'll actually pay you to teach classes. So basically it's a free ride, except it's not free because you're basically selling your soul for the next 5 years, but financially, it's free. So I just ended up applying and I got accepted. So to me, that was a good example of, you can get rejected, but there's always doors that open up later on in life for something that you really want to do. And so that was the case. And I'm still surprised they accepted me, because they only accept about 6 or 7 people a year. But so I did. And 5 years later, I'm graduating right now. So I just passed my dissertation defense, and and it's hard to believe that it's all over.
Wow.
It was not.
Congratulations. That is incredible.
It was not an easy. It was not really always a pleasant experience. It was rather excruciating at different times for different reasons. But I'm glad it's over. I can get on with my life. So I did learn certain things that are helping me in the area of research. So I appreciate that.
So it does assist you in what you're doing and what your passion is for. It has come full circle where it is going to work very well together for you. Yeah,
we'll see. It helped me to look at different situations from different perspectives and be able to, because a lot of the program actually was more based on philosophy than anything else, and learning to identify how we always hold a particular framework, even if we don't think we are, like any, all of our beliefs can be like classified into different frameworks. And it helped me to really understand why a lot of people don't believe in psychic things, or don't even want to talk about it or open up their minds. Like I thought before that people just were, well, sometimes it clashes with their own religious beliefs. And sometimes they have different emotional reasons for not wanting to even go there. But just understanding how entrenched we are in a materialistic framework, and how that and where that came from, and why it's so integral in Western society. And so I came to understand that this framework wasn't just about being against psychic abilities, but it's even against the idea of like studying your internal mental processes. There's a lot of people like in psychology, or a lot of scientists actually in other fields that look down on psychology, and a lot of scientists who do not believe that studying like what people actually think or feel is a valid thing to study. So if you can't even study what people are thinking about, or you don't have any value if a person says, I'm experiencing this, or this is what I'm doing with my mind. If that's not like, there's some scientists who don't even think it's valid to say that people have thoughts, and that's why behavioralism was so prominent within our society for so long. Like, it's okay to study what people are doing, but not what they're thinking or feeling.
Right.
So help me to get this wider perspective, so I have more understandings of, why we're just in the situation that we are right now.
Yeah.
As far as what's the benefit of having that understanding? I don't know, but I just kind of look at life a little bit differently now.
Yeah.
So
I could see how that would be the case. I just adore that you have taken these next steps and that you've assisted so many people and you're yet to assist so many more. We need people like you in the world, and you're definitely showing up. So that is awesome. Thank you. Bill, our producer, has a question for you. What advice would you give to others who may be clairvoyant, handling the social implications when engaging with others and controlling all of the different connections and feelings?
So let's see if
It's a big question.
maybe say the first part of that again.
Okay. What advice would you give to others who may be clairvoyant while they're handling all of the different social implications, while they're engaging with other people, and also receiving the different psychic connections and feelings at that same time?
Yeah.
Does that
So
help break it down?
yeah, I think so. I think there's a few questions within that, but I would say that, well, first, it does really help to be around other people who are also experiencing these things, interested in these things. And, so that's why it is, I mean, the show is so helpful, obviously. And there's the wonderful thing is there is a lot more openness in Western society to these things. So there's no shortage of shows, of videos, of books. And I would say just people should saturate themselves with these topics and talking and even, if I would say ideally even going to communities where, people are more open to things, but not everyone can do that. A lot of times people find themselves in relationships, marriages, families, where they're suddenly opening up to their own abilities, but the people right around them aren't. But now with everything being online, it is just so easy to find others who are involved and not just one community. That was the thing when I started off and I found like the Berkeley Psychic Institute, which was a great place in those days, except that I found that there was this attitude there of, it was almost like the staff it wasn't almost, the staff put out there that the outside world was a scary world, where if you went out there, you were going to just meet up with skeptical people and you were going to just be the psychic all by yourself. And these were messages that were like put out to me and others. And when I knew that my path was not staying within that community, but going out on my own, I really had to work through these fears that like maybe I would just be isolated and lonely. And, besides for having my sister and a couple of friends, but I had to work through that. And that's where, again, my third book, Freeing the Genie Within, is about like the law of attraction and manifesting and how to get over obstacles. And I used those concepts to help me just like push aside this idea of, oh, I'm just going to be alone out there. I was like, no, there's people out there that believe in this stuff and do this stuff. And even though I don't know a lot of people, I'm going to find them. And as soon as I set my intention and I visualized myself surrounded by communities of people, it happened. It's happened so much. There's so many different psychic related communities out there. So that's really important. And, I'd say that's the biggest thing. And then going easy on the people around you that aren't into this stuff, just because you are, it's easy to be like, oh, well, this sucks. My husband doesn't really care about this stuff, or my kids aren't interested in it. But on the other hand, it's like, they don't need to be like,
Yeah.
who am I to put on them that I want them to, go be in this area? I mean,
Right. Great
sure,
advice.
I'll talk about it with them. And, I've been with, Danny now for 18 years, and he definitely is so much more of a believer. And, occasionally he'll wake up now and tell me his dreams, and we'll even have like matching dreams sometimes. And he'll ask me to go help him look for things that he's lost. But he's a mechanic, and he's,
Very human.
very, yeah. And so,
That's great,
it's not,
though.
yeah. So, I love that he's more open, and definitely that he's not arguing with me about it anymore.
Yeah.
Like when we first met. But on the other hand, it's not my place to try to convert him or get him to believe any different. And as long as he's respectful, which he totally is, totally supportive. And that's what we need. So I think, people need to surround themselves with people who are supportive of them, but that they don't need to be into this like we are, and being open to that, because it's really easy to say, well, other people aren't accepting of me, but then, it's a two-way street. We need to be accepting of them.
Great input. Absolutely great. I wish we had more time. We are literally down to the last minute of the show. So I want to make sure everyone knows your website. I know Bill's been posting it, but for those who aren't watching, can you share your information really quick so they can get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah. Just check out Debra Katz, DebraKatz.com. And it's right there on the screen. And yeah, I've got a class starting tomorrow in remote viewing. I'd love to have a couple more people, because we can just have a richer experience with more people in the class. So yeah, check it out. And thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you.
It's been so neat having these experiences with you and hearing all about what you're doing in the world. Keep at it. Keep shining that light. And I appreciate you and your time that you have spent with us tonight. Thank you so much, Debra.
Well, thank
Have a
you.
great night.
You too.
And to
Bye.
all of you, my wanderers, thank you for being here and listening, to Bill for producing this show, and everyone else out in the world. Keep on being good. Do the right things. Make everyone happy and smile and be positive and supportive and loving and kind. We'll see you all next week.